Good morning, AP Eagles. Welcome to your midweek video. I wanted to touch base with you guys about our current packet that we're in, that part 4 of what is actually Unit 7, even though it says Unit 8 on your packet. I just realized that. We're still in Unit 7. And this week focused on the Great Depression and the New Deal programs. Just so you guys know, there is our last part of this unit, Unit 5, which is World War II. And just so you guys know, World War II is where AP US History ends this year. The AP College Board, with their revised exam, decided that they will stop AP US History, at least the topic that could be asked about in the new revised DBQ. They're going to stop that at the end of Unit 7. They're not going to get into any more modern events. So everything after World War II, we're going to put a hold on. Those are things that we can obviously talk about after the exam. But for the time being, we're going to focus on finishing Unit 7, which could be the topic of the DBQ essay. And then obviously having a couple weeks to go back and review the other time periods that could be asked about on the exam. Now I do want to get into that revised DBQ at the end of this video. So please make sure after we do a quick review of what you've covered so far in your Part 4 packet that you guys really are paying attention. You might even want to get like a side sheet of paper to take some notes about the new revised AP exam, which you guys will be taking on May 15th at 2 o'clock. I'll say that again at the end of the video. But I want to get you guys aware of what that test is going to look like, get you quite a few more details than I gave you last time so that you can really start to think about the best way to prepare for the new AP exam. Okay, let's do this first. I want to just kind of quickly go over a couple of the pages here at the beginning of this packet to make sure that you guys are on the right track. You will spend the rest of this week finishing up this packet on the Great Depression leading up to World War II. We will be working on World War II next week, and that will finish our material for the AP exam. We will have covered everything that you need to cover to do well on that test, and that will leave us basically about 3 weeks to really work on honing in on what could be asked about on the new revised AP exam for 2020. The skills that we need to practice over the course of the next couple weeks, and I'm going to set you guys up to really get good at that DBQ essay so that when it rolls around on May 15th, you guys are in a really good spot to earn that college credit. Okay, so let's do this first. When you guys opened up this packet on Monday, I told you guys to kind of get into and researching these topics here before you read this document about FDR's fireside chat. And this is, by the way, what your assignment is on this week. This is due on Friday. I posted it yesterday for you guys. It does not need to be done right now because you might want to finish this packet first and then go back and work on writing those 3 parts of the assignment. Okay, but let's get into this first. You guys know that in the election of 1932, Franklin Roosevelt is going to be elected president. He's going to beat out Herbert Hoover. And remember, if we're looking to contextualize this period, we just had the Roaring 20s where things seem to be going great. But there's those underlying issues of overproduction, over-speculation, buying on margin or credit buying in the stock market. And then ultimately in 1929, the stock market crashes, sparking the Great Depression. Great Depression starts right after that, 1929. Herbert Hoover is the president. Remember, he was the president that basically just said, like, hey, this is how the economy works. It goes up and down. And the only way to cure this Great Depression is with patience. And as many Americans are suffering, as they've lost their jobs, lost their life savings, are struggling to pay rent and get food and provide those basic needs for their families, Americans don't want to hear about patience. They want help, and they want help now. And Hoover just doesn't seem like the president that's willing to give them that. So the election of 1932 rolls around, and in the 1932 election, you have a real landslide victory. And that's sort of what I started this part of the notes with, a real landslide victory for FDR. Because FDR, when he was campaigning to become president in that election, started talking about America getting a new deal. And what he meant by that is it was time for the American government and the president to create a new deal for Americans. We got to create a new scenario to help deal with this depression, because what we're doing up to this point is just not being successful. So FDR will be elected. And there's a time period, it's called FDR's first 100 days. You might want to write that in there if you don't have it. The first 100 days. In the first 100 days after FDR was inaugurated into office, right, this 100-day time period from the start of his presidency, FDR will help get passed through Congress 13 major pieces of legislation. Quick action. That's what that shows, right? 13 major pieces of legislation to help deal with the Great Depression just in the first 100 days. What this shows Americans is that it is possible for the president to be very, very active right away in their presidency. In fact, a lot of presidents since this time period will very much be judged by their first 100 days. Because once FDR set that precedent that presidents can be very active and can make rapid change, other presidents will sort of be expected to do the same thing. Now, these 13 pieces of legislation that he passed all focused on what is often referred to as the 3 R's of the New Deal program. So the New Deal programs are going to last multiple years, sort of adding to them throughout his presidency. But the 3 R's are relief, recovery, and reform. And they do sort of go in that order when you think about it. The whole idea of relief is we need to get Americans what they need now. We need to provide them with relief right now, something that will help them out in this moment. The recovery one. Recovery is more of like this one's one that's put in place to help us sort of gradually improve the situation. So I'm going to get you immediate relief, but then I'm also going to create programs that will help us recover as a country over time. And then the reform is the changes that will make sure that an event like this doesn't happen again. We're going to make reforms that will prevent any kind of future Great Depression from ever happening again. So relief, recovery, and reform. And the research that you guys did yesterday in the New Deal programs, those ones focused on fulfilling sort of those 3 R's. So you have now examples of New Deal programs, specific ones, and we'll talk about those in a second, that fall within each of those 3 categories of your R's, okay? Do know this, and we'll talk more about this at the end of this week. FDR, for as much as you might hear this and think like, wow, what a great president, this is such a good thing for him to do at this time of panic and crisis. Opponents of FDR will be critical of him. They will say that he is abusing his power, that he is overextending executive power, right? That he is expanding executive power, that he's even becoming like a dictator. You guys remember how Andrew Jackson was referred to as King Andrew. It's sort of that same idea that critics of FDR are going to say, president doesn't have the power to do all of these things. You know, this is overextending his presidential power. Now, you guys know the excuse that will be made, or the justification, is FDR is going to say this country is in a moment of crisis, of panic. It's very similar to a war. While we're not battling a foreign country, this country is very much under attack. It's sort of like an economic attack, right? And Americans are suffering, and we need to battle this Great Depression. So just like in World War I, we had these ideas of, you know, and even the Civil War too, during those times of crisis, it's acceptable for the government to sort of expand its power. Now, some people don't agree with that, right? But that is an idea that exists, that during these moments of crisis, it's okay for the government and the president to exceed their normal amount of power. And that's sort of the justification that FDR and the people that support FDR are going to use, okay? So that's the first part of your notes. The bank holiday was the next part after this, and hopefully you guys just found this very simply in Googling it and reading up on it. But basically the bank holiday happened in March of 1933. It was right after his inauguration. He wanted to do this quickly. And basically what he did, they call it the bank holiday, but what it really is just closing the banks for a bit. And what he said is, I'm going to close the banks for a week, all banks across the country. And I'm going to tell Americans that this is happening, so just so they're aware of it. We're going to close the banks because these banks are on very shaky ground, right? And they have been ever since the stock market crash. We need to give them a 1-week break to reorganize themselves and restructure the banks so that when they open up in a week, they're fixed. Now, are they really, really fixed? Maybe not necessarily, but they're stable again. And that's what FDR wanted. He wanted the banks to suspend all their transactions for a week, reorganize themselves, restructure themselves so that when they opened up in a week, Americans would have a renewed faith in banks, because many Americans had been refusing for the last couple of years to put any money into banks. We don't trust banks anymore. Remember the run on the banks in the start of the Depression, and banks closed on us and we lost our life savings, so we don't trust banks anymore. FDR wanted them to know it's safe to put your money in banks. The banks are reorganized, they're restructured, they are ready, and we will make the reforms necessary to these banks to make sure that that event, those run-on banks and the closing of the banks, that it doesn't happen again. All right? And the bank holiday got Americans to sort of believe in the idea of banks again. Okay? And one of the things that FDR was really good at is that whole idea of the belief. Getting Americans to believe like it's going to be okay. It's going to get better. I got this for you guys. And that's actually where this next piece came in, right? The fireside chats. What FDR decided to do as president was a weekly radio address. So every week he would come on the radio and basically say, hello, Americans. Let me tell you all of the great things that have happened over the course of this last week. Let me tell you personally, right, of all of the changes that we are making to help deal with this Great Depression. And what FDR was really trying to do was not like promote himself or like, oh, this is a great campaign strategy to increase my popularity. He was trying to ease people's fears. If I go on the radio and I talk to them in their living rooms through the radio and I tell them, guys, here's all the things that we're doing. We are on it. We are on top of it. Americans are going to sort of take that deep breath and realize like this isn't going to last forever, and we got the right guy for the job, and things are getting done and things are going to get better. It's sort of to boost that belief that they got the right man in office, and the Great Depression is being dealt with. And you guys read the first here of the fireside chats. This is the one that you guys are supposed to do your writing assignment on this week. I set up that assignment in a way to help you guys start practicing for that new DBQ essay, the revised DBQ essay for 2020. There are 10 points on the new rubric for the new DBQ essay, and the assignment that I set up is to practice 5 of those. So half of the points that you can get on the DBQ on May 15th can be practiced just using a single document. Okay, and I want you guys to try that this week and kind of get your feet wet with what are the things that we need to do to make sure we're getting our points in this, all right? And I'll talk more about that at the end of the video. Guys, the last part of this, because I'm going to skip this page because my understanding is you guys don't have it in your packet. You don't need it. It's just a recap of the reading. Is the programs. And look, guys, here's the 3 R's, right? Relief, recovery, on the next page is reform. Those are the things that FDR was focused on when he created his programs. Now, I'm not going to go through all these word for word. There we go. I'm not going to go through all of these word for word. One thing that I do want to mention to you guys, though, is look, right? Each of these programs has these initials after them, right? So the Public Works Administration is the PWA. Civilian Conservation Corps is the CCC, right? And it keeps going. Another nickname for the New Deal or the New Deal programs was called alphabet soup. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever had alphabet soup. It was a Campbell's soup, and there's an actual alphabet soup where the noodles are shaped like letters in the alphabet. And every time you scoop up a spoonful of alphabet soup, you have these different letters in your spoon, and you can look at the different letters, right? When they nicknamed FDR's New Deal programs alphabet soup, they were basically saying, like, he's creating so many new programs and there's so many new acronyms for these so many new programs. It's like picking up a spoonful of alphabet soup, because any letter combination that you're seeing in there, there's a New Deal program with that combination of letters. All right. So he called it alphabet soup because there's so many different acronyms with so many different programs. I think alphabet soup was sort of meant to be a promotion of the New Deal programs, sort of meant to like flaunt it, like, wow, look at everything that's happening. But again, don't forget, there will be some critics of those programs saying that they're wasteful, saying that they're in excess of executive power. And we'll talk more about that at the end of the week. Okay, guys, just super fast then. The New Deal programs, but hopefully you found these. These are pretty quick to research. What you should be looking to write down, by the way, is just sort of a general description of what it is. the goal behind it, and then the effects of it, whether or not it worked. So like, for example, the Public Works Administration. This is a program that was meant to stimulate the construction industry, building trades, right? Because building had stopped, because construction companies had folded at the start of the Great Depression. FDR says, I'm going to use federal dollars, and this one's going to cost several billions of dollars, but he's going to stimulate the construction industry and put people back to work. This program ended up putting 4 million Americans back to work in the construction industry, right? So that's what you're looking to do here is give me a description of what the program is, give me the goal of the program, and then whether or not it worked. Civilian Conservation Corps. Again, let's put Americans back to work. This is considered to be one of the most successful New Deal programs. It ended up employing over 3 million Americans by the end of this program. It's classified as a public reliefs work program. Now you can see in the name, right? Civilian Conservation Corps. We know that under Teddy Roosevelt, he was real into conservationism. FDR said, let's use federal dollars to help with that, right? Put people back to work, but it's going to benefit America too. And what he did is he put a lot of Americans into those forests, right? Those national parks that had been set aside to maintain trails. We need people to be blazing these trails, to be maintaining them. Forest roads for people to get in and out of these national parks. They need to be built, they need to be constructed, they need to be paved. Irrigation projects. Flooding is a problem in some of these areas. We want people to enjoy the national parks, so let's have people building dams and preventing flooding and building irrigation systems. So it benefits America, but it also puts millions of Americans back to work. The Federal Securities Exchange. So now let's get into some of these recovery programs. Federal Securities Exchange was supposed to help regulate the stock market to make sure that the crash that happened in 1929 never happens again. And the Federal Securities Act, it gives more power to the government to regulate the stock market. Okay, and what it also does in the Federal Securities Act, and this is actually on the next page of your packet, the Federal Securities Act also helps create what is known as the Securities and Exchange Commission, so that's on the next page. But the Securities and Exchange Commission is a portion of the government that is meant to monitor the stock market, to make sure that no illegal actions are taking place or abusive actions. Again, things like buying on margin, right? The credit buying or buying on margin, that shouldn't have ever happened. And the Securities and Exchange Commission is meant to monitor those things to make sure that those types of things aren't happening anymore. Okay? The Agricultural Adjustment Act, the one at the bottom, can tend to be one of the more confusing ones. Guys, the Agricultural Adjustment Act was meant to help the farmers. We know that farmers actually started suffering maybe before anyone else in America leading up to the Great Depression because they were overproducing crops. Because there was so much overproduction of crops, the price of crops dropped. So as farmers were trying to sell them, like, nobody wants them because we've overproduced so many crops. So they had to drop the prices, and then farmers stopped making profits on these crops. So the whole idea of the Agricultural Adjustment Act, it was designed to help boost prices on crops. So what the government basically did is they told farmers, like, hey, your problem is overproduction. If we decrease the supply of the food and crops that you've provided, right, decrease the supply, then the value of those crops increases and the price goes up. So what the government actually did is the government actually paid farmers to not farm, to not produce. What a crazy concept. The government is going to pay people to not produce food. All right, but basically what they did is the government bought up livestock and they paid farmers to essentially not farm their fields so that the supply of food and crops would drop. And when the supply goes down, the value of what does exist goes up. So the value of the food that does exist increases and prices go up and farmers start making more money. Now this one will be ruled unconstitutional in 1937 by the Supreme Court. We'll be talking more about that at the end of the week. But this one is the one that's going to receive a lot of criticism by Americans. Wait a minute, you're paying farmers not to farm. Like, this is crazy. This doesn't make any sense. People during the Great Depression need food. We're starving to death. People are standing in bread lines. Why are you paying them to not make food for us? But when you think about the concept behind it, there is some value to the concept of decreasing the supply, increases the value because we know the demand is high, and then you can sell these crops for higher prices. Now farmers can get back to actually making profits and money, which is going to help a huge portion of the population. Okay, let's finish this off here, guys. Your last one is reform. Now, hey, as a side note, there are many more New Deal programs than just this. These are just a handful of some of the more famous ones, all right? So good ones to know. As far as the reform ones, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, guys, this one was also meant to help restore faith in banks. What it basically does is it says when you put your money into a bank, the government is going to ensure that your money is there for you when you need it. So what it did is it covered deposits up to $250,000. Okay, the federal government says, hey, if you need your money and the bank has your money will be available to you. In fact, the government will back the bank to make sure that the bank ultimately ends up having the money that you need when you need it. All right. And again, part of this is that whole idea goes along with the bank holiday. Let's restore people's faith in banks. Let's make them feel comfortable with banks again and make them trust banks again. And that Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation was meant to do that. Securities and Exchange Commission, we already talked about that one, right? That was part of the idea on the previous page. The idea is to protect investors in the stock market. The idea is to require companies to submit accurate stock sales and profits and growth so that people don't do this whole over speculation thing that got us into the Great Depression, but we can accurately predict how well companies have been doing and how well they will be doing so people can make wise investments in stocks. Again, the other part of this was to obviously prevent the whole idea of margin buying, because it was margin buying in part that weakened the stock market. That Securities and Exchange Commission is going to prevent that. Finally, guys, your last one, the Social Security one. You guys know Social Security because this is one of the most impactful and most long-lasting of FDR's New Deal programs. What FDR basically said is that Social Security is something that should exist for Americans. In fact, many other modern countries at this time had already had Social Security programs, so we were actually a little bit late to the game. And the idea behind this is FDR wanted to make sure that people that were elderly, people that were disabled and not able to work, so let's say somebody that has some sort of like physical or mental handicap, it also provided for unemployment insurance as well. But the whole idea here is Americans that are not able to work, those people that are very, very old, those people that are handicapped in a way that they can't do certain jobs, those people that are not physically able to work can collect what is known as Social Security or Social Security payments. Now, if you guys work already, you already know a little bit about this because you know that in your checks, money is taken out. In all Americans' paychecks, Social Security is taken out of our paychecks in the form of these taxes, all right? And that money goes into this big Social Security fund, so all Americans pay into it. And the whole idea is that money is just kind of stockpiled there so that as people get older and unable to work, they can then start to pull out money that had originally been deposited really their entire life while they've worked. So the whole idea when FDR created this is that this was a program that would sort of feed itself as Americans pay into Social Security all these years that they work. Eventually, when they retire and get to be older, they can go back and say, hey, remember all that money I paid into Social Security? Well, I can't work anymore. I'd like to pull that out. And it comes in the form of a smaller Social Security check. So you feed into it your whole career, and then at the end, you can sort of pull out of it as needed. There are some fears about Social Security. It had to be modified over the years to make sure that it's not depleted and doesn't disappear. There will probably always be changes to the Social Security system, but this program, I should say, Social Security program is something that has been around for a long, long time and will continue to be around, hopefully, for a long, long time with the proper modifications. Sorry, I got kind of thrown off at the end. My daughter is currently telling our new puppy not to bite, if that's what you're hearing in the background. Okay, that takes care of the first 2 days of material. Hopefully that helped clarify some of the things that you guys have been researching. I wanted to talk and just answer a couple questions about the new AP exam, because just so you guys know, you will be taking this exam. Okay, I know Julian asked that last night. Yes, you are taking the new AP exam. Absolutely, right? This is what we've been training for the whole year. We're going to take it. You guys deserve to have the opportunity to gain college credit for this. After this whole COVID thing is over with, you guys still have your plans for the future. And if college is one of them, which I know it is for you guys, then yeah, you want this opportunity to earn the credit that you guys have been working towards all these months. So yes, you are taking the AP exam. Yes, it has been modified. And I actually think that this could really benefit you guys as long as we prepare ourselves for it. Because here's how it goes. The new AP exam will take place on May 15th. For you guys, it'll start at 2 p.m., strictly at 2 p.m. The new AP exam, the revised one, is a 45-minute exam. So it's greatly shortened from the 3.5 to 4 hours you were gonna do down to 45 minutes. And because it's only 45 minutes, there's now only one part of the test, not the parts that we had been planning on: multiple choice, short answer, DBQ, long essay question. Throw all those away. In 45 minutes, you guys will complete one DBQ essay. Okay, now the DBQ essay is modified a little bit, but all of the skills that you guys have been practicing are on this DBQ. So it is what we've been practicing on the DBQs that we have written and the rubric that we have worked with. It's just that the number of documents has changed and how points are awarded has slightly changed, just because instead of being out of 7 points, it's now out of 10 points. Now let's think about this, right? You guys will get 5 documents on this new revised DBQ essay. On the previous DBQ, you guys got 7 documents, and you were expected to try to use accurately and use them well to support your thesis at least 6. Well, with there only being 5, your goal is to try to accurately describe and use 4 of them, okay? I got the new puppy running through. Ruthie. Puppy. All right, sorry, 5 documents. You guys need to try to use 4 really, really well. Now, if you can do that, you guys can start to acquire all these points, right? Back to the logistics of how you guys are going to do this. It is going to be an online test, so the 5 documents will be posted, right, as you start the test from the AP College Board. So you're gonna have to log in using your logins, and don't worry, we'll get you guys all set up with this stuff. If you need a laptop, we're gonna get you guys set up with this stuff, right? Because as of right now, this test is gonna take place at school. It's gonna be May 15th. We should be back to school by then. If for some reason we're not, we're gonna get you guys set up to do this exam at home with laptops and internet and all these kinds of things. So we will help you guys out and we will take care of this. You guys will log in, and 2 o'clock will roll around, and boom, those 5 documents are gonna pop up. And you guys are going to start to analyze those 5 documents and read through them. And you're going to look at the DBQ prompt, right? The question being asked. Now, you guys can type out your answer, right? So for those of you guys that feel really good with your keyboards and you're like, I can cruise when I'm typing, right? Maybe you want to type your answers. Those of you guys that don't feel comfortable with that, right? You're thinking, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm not going to be able to write as fast because I'm not real good at, you can write yours. They're allowing that too. So you guys can write it out in your handwriting and then snap a photo with your cell phone and then upload that and send that to the College Board. So we have multiple options for how you're going to go about writing this, either typing it or handwriting it and snapping a photo. In the 45 minutes, you guys are going to analyze those documents and you guys are going to write your essay. And you're going to write the essay the exact same way we've been doing it all year long. See, nothing has changed as far as the actual essay organization itself. Introduction with a thesis or claim, contextualization paragraph, right? Introing us into the time period that's being asked about. Your body paragraphs where you use at least 4 of the 5 documents instead of 6 out of the 7, right? And you're still going to do all those pieces with outside information. You're going to do those parts with the sourcing, right? Where for at least 2, so it's not 4 anymore. Remember, it used to be the sourcing with, 3. It was 3 of the documents you have to talk about: point of view, audience, purpose, or historical context. Now it's 2. And if you do it with 2, you get 2 points, right? Not just 1 like you did on the old rubric. So all you have to do is 2 documents well with that, and you get double the points. See, I think this DBQ offers us a real opportunity to make sure you guys are getting college credit, but I need you guys to understand the rubric, and I need you guys to understand what you have to do on this test. So hopefully that gives you guys some of the background here. The rubric, if you're thinking about that, I should do this quick. The rubric has 10 points in it. The 10 points work like this. 1 point for a thesis or claim, right, that addresses the prompt in the question. All right, we've talked about and worked on thesis statements throughout the course of the year, so 1 point there. Second point is for contextualization, same way that the old rubric worked, right? Thesis, contextualization point is your first 2. Contextualize, right? You're going to have to give me what led up to the time period that is being asked about. More than just a sentence or 2, it has to be a couple sentences and really give some good background information. Document usage. If you can use 4 documents out of the 5 really well in addressing the prompt and meeting your thesis and claim, right? If you can do that with 4 out of the 5 documents, you get 3 points for that. 3 points, not 2 like you did on the old rubric, but 3. So if you can do the thesis, you can contextualize, and you can use 4 documents really well to sort of prove your thesis, you are up to 5 points. And guys, with a 10-point rubric, 6 out of 10 should get you the college credit, the score of a 3 out of 5 on the overall exam. So 6 points is sort of the line we're shooting for, or higher, all right? The other points come in outside information. It used to be include 1 good piece of outside information, you can get a point. Now it's 2, but it's worth 2 points. So the more outside information, and now you're going to get more for it. So that's worth 2 points. So now we're up to 7 points, right? The next 2 points are for sourcing. If you talk about the point of view, purpose, audience, or historical context for at least 2 of the documents that you use, that will get you 2 more points. Now you're up to 9 points, all right? And the last point comes basically in that sort of deep analysis. That's that last point at the end that we always talked about as the most sort of random. It's not very specific, but that last point is basically awarded for, did your essay and the way you wrote it and the evidence you used, did it dig deep into the topic, show a deep understanding of the time period and the question being asked, and did you, using all that evidence you put in there, did you prove your claim to be accurate? Did you nail what you said you were going to nail at the beginning of your essay in the introduction? 10 points. If you can get 6, you should get college credit, okay? We're going to practice this over the course of the next couple weeks. In fact, I am going to design a new DBQ essay for you guys to be working on shortly. I'm going to try to find the best way that I possibly can to give you guys feedback on these writing assignments you guys are getting, because 4.5 weeks from right now, you guys are going to be sitting down taking this DBQ essay. And if you can crush this, then you're going to get yourself some college credit, and that's what we want, okay? Oh, one last thing. I have had students ask me, is it open book?